The Sanders campaign isn't the only one targeting Michael Bloomberg ahead of Wednesday's debate. The former New York City mayor will be alongside 5 other candidates. Most appear to be sharpening their attacks. That includes Senator Elizabeth Warren. Earlier, she accused Bloomberg of buying his way onto the stage. On Twitter, Warren said the debate is going to be a good exercise in defeating President Trump, writing that since Bloomberg's there, it will, quote, be a live demonstration of how we each take on an egomaniac billionaire. For more, let's bring in Sabrina Singh. She is the national spokesperson for the Bloomberg campaign. Sabrina, thanks very much for being with us.
Thanks for having me. That's quite a quote you got there from Elizabeth Warren.
So I'd like to give you the chance to respond.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I sort of have to laugh at that. I mean, we're talking about a man that grew up in very middle-class roots, self-made billionaire, pulled himself up by his own bootstraps here, and now we're criticizing someone that is one of the biggest philanthropists in the world, who donated tens and tens of millions of dollars to House races last year to help flip the House from red to blue. I find it I find it puzzling why we're attacking the person that, helped get Democrats elected in 2018 and 2019. I think that candidates who see Mike's polling numbers on the rise, I mean, we've had a slew of polls come out today. I think they see him as a threat. But they weren't, to be clear, they weren't attacking him in 2018 when he was spending money to help Democrats get elected. And I think what people really take issue with is that Mike is rising in the polls. And that's just, the honest truth here. We're very excited to have the opportunity to have Mike be on the debate stage tomorrow for Americans to hear from him for the first time. And we're really looking forward to bringing our message to Nevada and actually to South Carolina, where the next debate is the following week.
Sabrina, the Bloomberg campaign released a campaign ad attacking Senator Sanders this week. In the video, we see social media posts allegedly from Sanders supporters threatening other Democratic rivals, including Bloomberg himself. Why did the campaign feel this was the best way to address the issue?
Because we're talking about a party where we need to bring the factions of the Democratic Party together. We need to have, a party that is united heading in to defeat Donald Trump. I tweeted about Bernie Sanders' campaign yesterday because they were spreading a video that was just doctored and not true, and something that the Trump campaign was pushing out. And the amount of hate and vitriol I got on Twitter for one tweet that was just correcting the record of a video, that is not what we need in this party. We need people to come together. We need people to, whoever the nominee is, and Mike has said this himself, whoever the nominee is, he's going to stand behind them and help them defeat Donald Trump in November. And so that's why we put out that video, to call into issue, we want the Sanders campaign to call on their supporters and say, hey, we don't need these personal attacks. We don't need to keep tearing each other down. It is fine to criticize and scrutinize one's records. I think that's completely fair. That should be out there for the public to address, and people will hear on the Nevada debate stage tomorrow night, where everyone stands and their records and how they stack up next to each other. Scrutiny of a record is fine. Personal attacks is not.
On another topic, Sabrina, a new report from New York Magazine this week notes that Bloomberg was the only serious contender to not give former President Obama a heads up before he entered the race, and that Michael Bloomberg waited until the end of the election to endorse Obama over Romney in 2012. I'm wondering, what is the nature of the relationship between Michael Bloomberg and former President Obama now in 2020? Did the mayor contact Mr. Obama before he announced his candidacy?
They have a great relationship, and they worked together, in 2012, or I believe in 2013, right after the Sandy Hook shootings, to address gun violence. They have tackled climate change together. They have brought, President Obama, I think in 2015, came to visit schools here in New York to talk about higher ed programs that Mike was investing in at the time. They do have a relationship with each other. I'm not going to get into any personal details of calls that might have taken place between them or the campaign. I'm just here to tell you that they have a great relationship with each other. Mike has tremendous respect for President Obama. He has since he met him back in 2007 when they actually had breakfast together. This is someone that Mike, I think, would love to continue to work with, in the White House and beyond.
Well, Michael Bloomberg has yet to receive any delegates, but heading into Super Tuesday, where he's competing heavily, does the campaign feel Senator Sanders is its biggest rival?
I think the race is really coming down to three people. It's coming down to Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump, and Mike Bloomberg. And I think at the end of the day, what voters have to look at is who can really beat Donald Trump? Who is the candidate that can take on Trump in the battleground states where he's been campaigning since basically day one of his presidency? And the only campaign that can do that is Mike. We have the infrastructure. We have over 2,400 people on staff. We have 150 offices open all across the country, including in the territories and Puerto Rico. This is a national campaign. While I think that Bernie Sanders has certainly run such a great race, and especially in these early states, we have to look beyond that. We have to look at the person who can actually unite the party, who can bring people together, both Democrats, independents, moderates, even Republicans, people that are disillusioned with Donald Trump and his presidency. We need them to come over to our side, and I just don't think Bernie Sanders at the top of the ticket can do that.
You mentioned the debate earlier. How is the campaign preparing for that?
Well, it is Mike's first debate. It will be his first debate since 2009, so over 10 years since he's been on a debate stage. And the last time he was on a debate stage, it was just with one other candidate and himself. So it's certainly going to be different for him. We've had our team, our mock debate prep team, doing prep sessions with him today. He's been campaigning to different states and cities, but definitely studying up, reading his material. I think we know that the knives will be out for us tomorrow, and he is definitely ready for the incoming.
How do you strike that balance, though, Sabrina, between kind of parrying attacks that might be coming your way with also this message of wanting to be a united party moving forward here?
I think it's one thing when someone is trying to attack you in your record, and they're trying to say things that are maybe not true or inaccurate that you want to correct. At the end of the day, and I think this is what the debates are for and what they should be for, is to give Americans the chance to see who you are and why you are the best candidate to defeat Donald Trump. We should be comparing policies that each candidate brings up. We should be talking about past records as well, because that's important for a voter to be informed on who this person is. But at the end of the day, I think the rhetoric coming out of some of our colleagues on the stage is not what's going to unite this party. I think they need someone that is going to actually work across the aisle to get things done. And Mike has a clear record of doing that as former mayor of New York.
So speaking of past records, as you know, of course, there's been intense scrutiny over the former mayor's comments defending stop and frisk. Today, he unveiled a criminal justice reform plan. Was that in response to that criticism that he's been receiving?
No, and actually we had, this is an additional criminal justice reform plan. We actually unveiled our Greenwood initiative, which is an initiative focused on investing in the African-American community. That was a few weeks ago in Houston. And even before that, when Mike first launched his campaign, one of the first policy proposals that we actually rolled out was a criminal justice reform initiative. This was just another one that we actually had already scheduled and planned for this week. And we wanted to roll it out ahead of the debate. But look, I mean, I think this is something that is going to come up, and candidates are going to keep bringing it up. But the one thing that I will say is that Mike has truly apologized for this. He did not understand how the devastating impact stop and frisk had on Black and brown communities. And I think a real testament to a true leader is, can you take responsibility and accountability for your actions? And that's what we're seeing Mike doing. Now, I think we can all know Donald Trump certainly does not do that in the White House. So it is refreshing at least to see someone take ownership of, say, hey, I was wrong with this policy. And I'm going to learn from it. And that's why we rolled out, our criminal justice initiative today. Is one of the policy points there is to reduce the incarceration rate by half by 2030. And so, these are the lessons learned that you take from the issue around stop and frisk and apply it when he's in the White House.
Our Major Garrett is reporting Mr. Bloomberg is on track to spend more than $450 million before Super Tuesday. Where is the bulk of the spending going?
It is going to hiring organizers, putting people, boots on the ground. It is going towards making sure that doors are knocked, texts are sent, people are getting out and voting for Mike. Look, we have to compete with the Trump operation right now. Donald Trump's and the RNC, we know that they are spending millions of dollars putting organizers in these battleground states. We have to be able to compete with them at that level, both on the ground, digitally, all across the country. We have to be able to compete, and we're the only campaign that can actually do that.
All right, Sabrina Singh. Sabrina, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
For more, let's bring in CBSN political contributor Lynda Tran. She's also a Democratic strategist. Lynda, good to see you again. We just heard from both the Sanders and Bloomberg campaigns. What kind of rhetoric do you expect to see from the candidates Wednesday night?
Well, look, I think Chuck was focusing on the high points of what Bernie Sanders' campaign has been able to accomplish, not only here, but in some of the earlier states as well. Their campaign has been very, very clear that part of their strategy is a very direct and concerted engagement of Latino voters. They've done creative things in order to bring people into the fold and explain to them the caucus process in particular. And so he was highlighting a lot of that. On the flip side, you heard Sabrina talk about their broad organization and what those resources that Mayor Mike Bloomberg has been able to put on the ground in the states that we're going to be seeing coming up on Super Tuesday, the 14 states where everyone will be competing.
And as we mentioned, Bloomberg introduced an additional criminal justice reform plan today. How do you think his campaign is handling the recent criticism of his past defense of the stop and frisk policy?
Well, look, I think if they're self-reflective, they understand that hearing that audio come to light and the fact that that stop and frisk policy existed in the first place is hurtful to a lot of people in African-American communities in particular, people of color more broadly. And it's important for them to show not only that he has evolved on the issue, but that he has a plan for addressing criminal justice in this country moving forward. So I think it was the smart move for them to come out with that. I think he's not done answering questions about it as much as they'd like him to be.
And Lynda, you're there in Las Vegas. Even though Michael Bloomberg is not on the Nevada ballot, how is he impacting the race there?
Well, the fact that Michael Bloomberg is going to be on the debate stage tomorrow night was a bit of a surprise, I think, for some of the campaigns. And there's no question that they are going to be focusing their fire on him as much as possible. We've already seen each of the leading campaigns lob some fire at Michael Bloomberg in recent days. They're focusing on his resources and trying to turn that into a negative. And I am certain that stop and frisk, some of these alleged sexist comments that may have been made in the past will come up on the debate stage tomorrow night.
Right. And the fact that he has a Republican record, that would not seem to be an asset in a Democratic primary, Lynda.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think that it's part of what might make him appealing in a general election if he can make it there. Because as we know, the Democratic primary electorate is fired up. The reason you're hearing all these cheers behind me here at the Bernie Sanders rally is that a lot of the Democratic voters really want to see systemic, progressive change in this country, and that's what's getting them excited and passionate in the primary election. All that said, Michael Bloomberg being able to spend 10 times what all of the other candidates have been able to spend combined across those 14 Super Tuesday states will certainly come into play. Not everyone is paying attention with as much detail as we are on a regular basis, and seeing these advertisements just over and over and over again on the air, touting his record on progressive issues and his abilities as a businessman certainly will be appealing to many.
Yeah. Well, Hillary Clinton narrowly won Nevada in 2016 by a margin of about only 2 percentage points. Remind us how critical the state is for the general election.
You know, Nevada is not unlike Iowa and New Hampshire, really a narrative-setting game. In the ideal world, such as Bernie Sanders finds himself in now, you've won those first 2 states, and now with Nevada, you're showing that you have the ability to engage individuals, engage voters in a more diverse electorate, especially in a place where 30% of caucus goers are expected to be from Latino communities. So if he wins, he can affirmatively build on the notion of the wind being at his back and him having that electability factor, which people are talking a lot about. All that said, it's a small number of delegates, just as the first 2 states were. We're really talking about just 30 some odd delegates that are going to be in play when there'll be more than 1,300 in play on Super Tuesday. So again, it's about the story you're able to tell, whether you're able to convince people at the grassroots and grass tops that you're the person to be.
All right, Lynda Tran for us. Lynda, thank you.
Thanks, Elaine.